Welcome everybody to this EUI online session organized by the Spirituality Group. Just a few words about the EUI to start. I know most of you are probably extremely familiar with the EUI, but just for anybody who might be watching this and who's not entirely sure what the EUI is, I'm going to say a few words about it. So, European Union of Yoga, it was founded originally in 1971, so it's been going for quite a few years now, and now has 25 members across 15 different countries. So it's quite a wide spread across Europe. From Finland, where our speaker comes from today, in the north, all the way down to Sicily in Southern Europe. Two things in particular that the EUI does in terms of activity. It has, of course, a 4-year, 500 contact hour teacher training course, a program shared across all the member federations. And it also, of course, organizes the annual congress in Sinal, which has been happening since 1973. A week of yoga in the Swiss Alps. This year, that will be happening between the 17th and the 21st of August. And if you've been before and enjoyed it, you might want to come back. If you've never been, then you might want to experience coming to yoga and coming to yoga in Zinal and meeting lots of other European yogis. It's a great experience. So between the 17th and the 21st of August, and the theme this year is going to be emotions in yoga. And as usual, there'll be lots of different talks and lectures and workshops happening across the week. Now to our speaker today. So Matti Rautaniemi is a member, as I said, of the Finnish Yoga Federation. He's been practicing yoga since 2005, studied theology, and has written several books on the history and philosophy of yoga, and is currently writing another book, which is a biography of a yogi. He is currently the co-host of a Finnish podcast, which sounds very interesting, but probably not accessible to those of us who don't understand Finnish, which is unfortunate. So lucky that we have him here today, speaking in English, and grateful to him for to being with us today. His topic is yoga and Bhoga, the goal of yoga through the lens of history. So over to you, Matti, and thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. It's great to be here. Great to be part of this spirituality program. And thank you for everyone for tuning in this morning. I have a really interesting topic for today, and I'm sure you will all find it enjoyable and interesting. The topic of the lecture today is yoga and Bhoga, the goal of yoga through the lens of history. And I will give a sort of like probably a pretty unique perspective on how the goal of yoga has changed through history. And I hope that this will give you something to think about and maybe see your own practice and your own teaching in a new light. Nowadays, at least here in Finland, it is quite common to hear people say that yoga is an experience. I don't know if this is the case in other countries as well, but in Finland you hear this type of phrase all the time. And this idea of yoga as an experience has become sort of a truism, a statement that is rarely analyzed or questioned in any way. And this statement of yoga as an experience is, of course, meant to emphasize that the essence of yoga, that what yoga is really about, is something that cannot be really put into words. that it is something that everyone needs to experience for themselves. Also, this phrase is often used to emphasize the importance of practice over philosophy. To really understand what yoga is about, you have to practice it, you have to do it, not only to talk about it. And I don't think that any one of us would really disagree with any of these views. At least I wouldn't. But if we look at this statement, yoga is an experience, from the point of view of yoga philosophy, it becomes really interesting and a little bit problematic as well. And this is something I will be talking about today. Because if we look at the historical development of ideas and practices that have been called yoga at various times, we noticed immediately that the relationship between yoga and experience has changed, and it's far from straightforward. In this lecture, I will look at 4 historical examples which illustrate these changing ideas of yoga and experience. We will begin with examining how yoga and experience are defined in yoga philosophy. What do they actually mean? Then we turn to the roots of yoga, to the Vedic culture, Shramana asceticism, and the Upanishads, where we find first mentions of these ideas of yoga and experience. Then we will look at the Bhagavad Gita, a really interesting yoga text, which deals almost exclusively with this theme of yoga and experience. Then we look at Hatha Yoga, how the ideas of physical body and health completely changed the ideas of yoga and experience in Middle Ages in India. And finally, we come to the modern yoga phenomenon, the global thing that we are seeing around us right now, and see that the relationship of yoga and experience is completely changed in the modern times. But before going into the historical examples, let's look at the concepts of yoga and experience, so we know what we're talking about here. The word yoga comes from the Sanskrit root yuj, which means yoking or joining together or concentrating. It is often translated as union, which is a useful shorthand, although it doesn't have all the, it isn't quite that straightforward, because in many contexts, yoga refers less to mystical unity and more to discipline, restraint, and focus. Of course, these meanings of focus and union don't cancel each other out. It's a question of emphasis. However, it can be said that in the classical sources, in the earliest yoga texts, yoga means a state in which one's attention and senses are withdrawn from the objects of experience, and mind and senses are directed inwards toward the inner world of consciousness.
Matti, I'm sorry to
Yes?
interrupt you, but should we be seeing some explanation on the screen at the moment?
You should be seeing a circle with a dot at the center.
That's definitely all we should be seeing.
Yeah.
Okay, that's fine. I think some people were just wondering, so that's great. We're good.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Sorry for interrupting.
Just to let you know, there will be no text at the slides. Experience, on the other hand, is called in Sanskrit Bhoga. Funny how that rhymes with yoga, right? And this is not a coincidence. Bhoga comes from the Sanskrit root bhuj, which means enjoying, partaking, or experiencing. And it is most often translated as enjoyment. However, as we will see, Bhoga refers to something more fundamental. It's not only enjoying pleasurable experiences, but the position of being a subject who experiences things, who consumes sensory experience. Bhoga means a state in which one's attention and senses are directed outwards, towards the things we see, hear, taste, sense, smell, and think about, and feel. To understand the relationship and even tension between yoga and bhoga, we need to understand the basic metaphysical assumptions behind the worldviews from which yoga emerges. Broadly speaking, classical Indian thought approaches existence from the point of view of experiencing consciousness. And this is an important point. If we look at the Vedic texts, the Upanishads, or any of the classical Indian literature, human beings are not primarily understood as physical beings, physical objects, acting in an objective outer world, but as conscious subjects who are having an experience of existence through their senses and mind. And within this consciousness-centered framework, classical Indian literature describes two fundamental orientations towards life and existence: pravritti and nivritti. Pravritti means outward directed orientation. It refers to participation in life, in engaging in social relationships, work, ritual, pleasure, and pursuit of life's ordinary goals. This pravritti is not only the most common orientation, but it is also culturally and socially normative one. That's how human beings are expected to live. And it is the essence of bhoga, of experience. Nivritti, on the other hand, means inward directed orientation. It refers to withdrawal from worldly participation. In practice, it means turning inwards. It means renunciation, asceticism, letting go of the goals, actions, and attachments that normally define human life. And this inward turning nivritti orientation is found in many ascetic traditions of India, and it also, most importantly, forms the philosophical background of early yoga. And next we will look how these concepts relate to the history of yoga. First, let's look at the Katha Upanishad, which is one of the earliest yoga texts. The Upanishads belong to the ancient Vedic literature of India, and behind them lies the Vedic culture, whose central symbol was the yagya ritual, which was performed at the fire altar. The Vedic priests chanted mantras and gave offerings to the fire altar in order to maintain cosmic balance. We can say that in the Vedic culture, this fire altar functioned as a kind of social media of the gods, which means that it was used for maintaining good relationships and connections between different levels of reality. so that things go as they should go on. And this theme of maintaining maintaining relationships between different levels of reality and maintaining cosmic balance is central to most Vedic texts. The symbolism of the fire altar is also the starting point of the Katha Upanishad, and it also plays part in many central Upanishads. But Katha Upanishad starts with this fire altar. But as we will see in the Katha Upanishad and other Upanishads, the Upanishads mark a significant shift in the Vedic thought. The attention gradually moves away from the fire rituals, the external ritual, pravritti orientation, towards questions about what human beings and reality ultimately are, which is the essence of nivritti orientation. The Katha Upanishad tells a story of a boy named Nachiketas, who is a son of a Vedic priest. And in the beginning of the text, he's watching his father prepare a Vedic fire ritual. And Nachiketas starts to question his father's actions. He says that the offerings his father are preparing are not suitable for the gods. And he's also otherwise like interrupting what his father is doing. And one thing leads to another, and Nachiketas finds himself in the realm of death. And in the realm of death, Yama, the lord of the realm of death, teaches Nachiketas about the inner essence of the human being, the conscious subject behind all our changing experiences. And yoga is mentioned in the Katha Upanishad as means of realizing the inner essence of existence, of what it means to be a human. And the text contains several important sections. And here we will focus on two. The distinction between pleasurable and good, and the parable of the chariot, which includes the Upanishadic definition of yoga. Let's first look at the distinction between the good and the pleasurable. When Yama begins his teaching of yoga to Nachiketas, he makes a distinction between two things, the good and the pleasurable. Prayas in Sanskrit means pleasurable, and Shreyas means good in Sanskrit. Prayas, according to Yama, means directing one's attention towards transient things, towards pleasures, wealth, comfort, happiness, and social success. And it is quite clear that this corresponds to the outward directed pravritti orientation, experience, Bhoga. Shreyas, on the other hand, means directing one's attention inwards, towards what is unchanging and ultimate, towards self-knowledge. And this corresponds to nivritti orientation, to yoga. So we see that this distinction between pravritti and nivritti is at the center of Katha Upanishad. And it also deals very clearly with this distinction between yoga and Bhoga. The most famous part of Katha Upanishad is the parable of the chariot, which presents the basic viewpoint of yoga philosophy and offers a clear definition of yoga. In the parable of the chariot, human being is compared to a chariot that is drawn by horses. The body is the chariot itself. The senses are the horses which pull the chariot forwards. And the mind is the reins which control the horses. On the driver's seat sits buddhi, or discerning intellect, who holds the reins. And in the chariot sits the passenger, Atman, the ultimate consciousness, the experiencer itself. And this parable of the chariot is the first systematic presentation of yoga's understanding of human being. And it is in one way or the other present in all later yoga texts, such as the Bhagavad Gita, which we will examine next. But before that, let's focus a little bit more on this metaphor. The Katha Upanishad states that if a person does not train their mind, the senses rush out in pursuit of attractive experiences, like unruly horses. And when this is the case, the passenger of the chariot, Atman, cannot reach their destination. But when the charioteer, the driver, buddhi, is awake, a person can turn their mind inwards and focus instead of letting the horses run wild. And then the senses remain under control, the chariot moves in the right direction, and the passenger reaches their destination. The Katha Upanishad states this as follows. When the senses and mind are stilled, and higher understanding comes to rest, that is the highest state. This is called yoga, the steady control of the senses. And it should be noted that this control is not about repression, but direction, so that attention can turn inwards. And from this we can conclude that in the Katha Upanishad, yoga means turning away from experience toward the ultimate experiencer, the Atman. And this is the essence of nivritti orientation, of turning inwards, away from experience towards what or who is experiencing. And this orientation defines the earliest forms of yoga. And this nivritti orientation doesn't disappear with the Upanishads. It reaches its most systematic and uncompromising formulation in Patanjali's Yoga Sutra, which is considered by many to be the most important yoga text of all time. And according to a strict interpretation of Yoga Sutra, the goal of yoga is the complete separation of consciousness and reality, in effect, the end of experience. And this is the first way yoga and experience are defined in yogic literature. They are seen as almost opposites to each other. To make it more clear, just in case, all sensory information, bodily sensation, emotions, and thoughts are experiences. And what yoga is interested in these early sources are who or what is experiencing all these things. That's what yoga is looking for, not at the experiences, not pleasurable experiences, not unpleasant experiences, but what is behind all this. But from very early on, this was also challenged and questioned in yoga philosophy. Katha Upanishad makes it very clear that the roots of yoga lie in the nivritti orientation, the ascetic renunciation of participation in the world and even sensory and mental experience. However, most yoga practitioners of history have not been renunciates. What should we make of this? This question of yoga and experience clearly interested ancient Indian yogis, because it forms the basis of one of the most important classical yoga texts, the Bhagavad Gita. The Bhagavad Gita presents a dialogue between Prince Arjuna and his charioteer, Krishna. In the text, Arjuna is about to lead his army into battle against an opposing force that includes his own relatives. And standing on the threshold of the battlefield, Arjuna becomes overwhelmed by doubt and tells Krishna that he will not fight. And because we are dealing with a classical yoga text, we might expect that Krishna congratulates Arjuna for choosing renunciation. Great choice, let's not fight. And perhaps he would suggest that let's go and practice some yoga together. But this is not at all what happens. Instead, Krishna rebukes Arjuna and tells him that he is a coward. And he also tells him that you are a warrior, you have to fight. And this surprising turn of events leads to a discussion, a profound debate even, between Krishna and Arjuna about why participation in the battle rather than withdrawal from it is the path to freedom. When we first encounter the Bhagavad Gita, this may sound really confusing. But now that we are discussing yoga and bhoga, pravritti and nivritti, the situation becomes a lot more clearer. As a warrior, Arjuna's duty, his way of participating in existence, is to fight. But instead, he seeks to withdraw, and he argues that action, participation, would destroy cosmic balance, dharma. And Krishna disagrees. He insists that only through action in the world, however difficult it is, we can maintain cosmic balance and at the same time attain inner freedom. Now, there are many ways to interpret the Bhagavad Gita, but in the context of this lecture, on one fundamental level, the text seems to be concerned with the relationship between yoga and bhoga, between inner realization and outer experience. And this leads us to the central philosophical innovation of the Bhagavad Gita, that the problem is not experience itself, but our attachment to experience. Unlike the Katha Upanishad and the Yoga Sutra, the Bhagavad Gita does not ask us to turn away from experience. Instead, it seeks to transform our relationship with the experience. And for this transformation, the Gita proposes 3 approaches to yoga: Jnana Yoga, Karma Yoga, and Bhakti Yoga. Jnana Yoga means that we seek to understand what experience actually is, to analyze it mentally and intellectually in order to make a distinction between the ultimate experiencer and what is experienced. And the point here is the same as in the Katha Upanishad. The ultimate experiencer is something beyond our senses, emotions, thoughts, personality, and even individual consciousness. The second path of yoga, as outlined by the Bhagavad Gita, Karma Yoga, means detachment in experience. It means that we can do what is needed in life in any given situation without clinging to its results. In the context of the Bhagavad Gita, this is ultimately and intimately connected with the classical Indian idea of the correct order of classes, castes, and life stages, varna, ashrama, dharma. But it can also be applied to other ways of living in the world. The point is that when we know that our inner essence is something different from what we are experiencing, we can act without attachment. And then we come to the third path of yoga as outlined in the Bhagavad Gita. Bhakti Yoga, which means that when we are acting with the knowledge of our inner essence and in this non-attached way, we can make our experience of the world sacred. We can act as if we were serving something far greater than ourselves, a god or a supreme being, however we want to conceptualize it. In the Bhagavad Gita itself, the emphasis is clearly on a personal God. And this brings a distinctly religious emphasis on yoga as well. But the main point here is that the Bhagavad Gita teaches that through these 3 approaches, the mental, the practical, and emotional, we can solve the apparent conflict between yoga and bhoga, of union and experience, and attain freedom while participating in the world. This is a great revolutionary idea even. So, to conclude, in the Bhagavad Gita, the goal of yoga is not freedom from experience, as it was earlier seen. And it is not experience. It is not about gaining certain kinds of experiences, but it is a way of life where we can strive for freedom within experience, to live fully while remaining inwardly non-attached. But this is not the end of the development between yoga and bhoga. Something more radical is coming up soon. We have seen how yoga can be defined as freedom from experience. as in the Katha Upanishad. And we have seen that yoga can be defined as freedom within experience, living fully in the world while remaining free inwardly. And next we come to Tantra and Hatha Yoga, which go even further. Rather than asking how we can remain free despite experience, Tantra and Hatha Yoga ask a more radical question. What if experience itself can become path to liberation? If yoga is seen as turning inwards, which is the essence of nivritti orientation, and it is still very much present in the Bhagavad Gita, then the mind, the body, and the senses are seen as obstacles for yoga. But certain strands of non-dual Tantra challenge this idea. They see the mind, the senses, and the body, and even the whole material world as not separate from consciousness, from the experiencer. Rather, the mind and the senses and material world are seen as ways in which the experiencer experiences itself. This is a really radical, complete overturning of the point of view of the earliest yoga texts. And this radical philosophy becomes the basis of Hatha Yoga, a historical form of yoga which uses physical exercises and bodily techniques to attain non-dual realization. In Hatha Yoga, the unity of the experiencer and the experienced is approached through the body itself. This type of yoga flourished in India from the 12th century onwards. And at this point, it is really important to note that this early Hatha Yoga is not based on biomedical understanding of the body and human beings as biological, physical creatures. Even though the exercises of Hatha Yoga are meant to strengthen the body, they are not seen as exercise in any modern sense. Rather, they are esoteric techniques to work with a subtle energy system that is the Hatha Yogic view of the body. For example, one of the key manuals of Hatha Yoga, the Hatha Yoga Pradipika, which is from the 14th century, it explicitly presents the methods of Hatha Yoga as means to awaken the latent energies within the body and to balance this whole system of energy currents. In Hatha Yogic view, the body is composed of prana, a vital force that animates it and animates everything existing. Through breath control, seals or mudras, postures or asanas, we can direct this energy to balance it and generate certain intensified states within it, which produce transformative experiences, which completely changed our identity and view of ourselves and the world. And these intense experiences and manipulating experience are something completely new within the context of yoga. Powerful and uncommon experiences are seen in Hatha Yoga as signs that the yogi is on the right path and that the practice works. At the same time, physical health gains a new role in Hatha Yoga. A strong and healthy body is seen as prerequisite for advancement in yoga. So for the first time in the history of yoga, intense bodily experiences and emotional experiences as well are not seen as distractions from liberation, but rather as evidence of progress. But nevertheless, ultimately, classical Hatha Yoga is not about pleasant experiences and well-being in any modern sense, although they are seen as essential parts of the process. The goal of Hatha Yoga is embodied understanding of the unity of subjective consciousness and objective reality. And this is still in line with all the earlier ideas about yoga as a method of self-realization. But at the same time, the conditions are now set for the final transformation, a form of yoga in which experience itself becomes the goal. Everything we have discussed up until now relates to yoga as it was practiced in India in the centuries before the modern era. About, I would say, almost 3,000 years of yoga history. However, after the 19th century, a lot has happened. Yoga has moved outside of India and become a global phenomenon. At the same time, yoga has detached itself from the social, cultural, and metaphysical frameworks that defined the forms of yoga we have discussed here. This so-called modern yoga is a cultural hybrid that was born as an indirect result of the British colonial rule in India. And this is really interesting because by the early 19th century, yoga had almost disappeared in India. It wasn't publicly visible, and it had lost much of its cultural prestige. Yoga was not cool in any way. However, during the 19th century, yoga was also rediscovered, and to put it a little bit provocatively, it was reinvented. And during the 19th century, yoga was reshaped through the lens of Neo-Hinduism, the Indian independence movement, and Indological research. And this changed how yoga was viewed in India. Gradually, yoga was further recontextualized and reinterpreted through the influence of biomedicine, physical culture, and psychology. And instead of an esoteric practice that aimed at profound inner transformation, yoga became more and more seen as a form of physical culture which had also a psychological dimension. And these developments were really important because they made it possible for yoga to spread outside of India, to the United States and to Europe. And this was also the beginning of the global yoga phenomenon we are seeing today. And although this modern global yoga phenomenon is very diverse and has many approaches to yoga, there is one dominant theme that distinguishes this global yoga from its historical predecessors. And this is the overwhelming emphasis on physical practices. It could even be said that today yoga is synonymous with the practice of asana. This is exemplified, for example, by such common expressions as yoga and meditation, even though historically the earliest yoga methods were in fact techniques for concentrating the mind. With the focus on the physical body, also the senses and their experiences are seen in a completely new way. They have become the central focus of the practice. What does this mean? What does it mean that the big selling point of yoga are physical practices? It means that the goal of yoga is not so much at the center anymore. Rather, we are talking a lot about the effects of yoga. People seek out yoga for its effects, for pleasant bodily and emotional experiences. I haven't met many people, at least in my life, who go to yoga to turn their attention away from the body or to detach themselves from experience. People go to yoga to relax, to experience opening, to enhance their sense of well-being, which are all at the core of experience. And of course, there is nothing wrong with any of the effects of yoga. Pleasant experiences are just that. They are very pleasant. And they may be, even in many ways, they may be really beneficial. However, it is important to note that based on the dichotomies discussed in this lecture, the experience that is now at the center of yoga is something completely new, and it means a complete reversal of the ideas we find at the roots of yoga. Yoga has turned from nivritti orientation to pravritti orientation. Yoga has turned from consciousness to the senses. We could even say, if we want to be a little bit provocative again, that in many contemporary forms of yoga, the goal of the practice is no longer yoga or union, it is bhoga or experience. The experience itself may be refined, meaningful, deep, pleasant, but it's still essentially experience. And in this context, saying that yoga is an experience makes complete sense. But as we have seen, that is not the whole truth of yoga. So now we have looked at the relationship between yoga and experience from 4 different viewpoints. And we often talk about yoga and experience as if these things were self-evident, as if everyone has the same understanding about what yoga is, what experience is. But here I have a little bit tried to make it a little bit more complicated for you. To sum up, in the earliest forms, yoga was not understood as experience at all. It was withdrawal from experience, turning away from the senses towards the experiencer itself. In the Bhagavad Gita, these two things were brought together. Yoga became to mean freedom within experience, how to experience life without being attached to it. With Hatha Yoga, experience became more important for yoga. Intense bodily and energetic experiences were no longer obstacles or side effects, but as signs of progress and tools of transformation. And finally, we come to the modern situation where experience is the central focus, where people seek out pleasant experiences through yoga, and that's why they come to yoga. Yoga is practiced for how it feels. And because history is what it is, none of these developments should be seen as mistakes. There's nothing wrong with any of them. Each of these ideas about yoga and experience make complete sense within their own historical and cultural context. But what I want to highlight here is that these are not the same thing. There are differences within yoga. And this brief historical survey shows that yoga has never had a single fixed goal. Its relationship to experience has always been a subject of discussion, negotiation, and even something people have sought to change, as we saw with the Bhagavad Gita. It is a very early yoga text which starts with the problem between yoga and experience, which I find really fascinating. So, what does this mean for us as modern yoga practitioners who are ultimately part of this global modern yoga phenomenon? What should we make of all this? Unfortunately, or maybe fortunately, I cannot give you the final answer to this question. The reason I am talking about this is that I find this example of yoga and experience a really great way of pointing out how the relationship between yoga practice and philosophy is very intimate. You cannot separate philosophy from practice. It is the philosophy that informs how we practice yoga and what are we trying to achieve through our practice. If we don't have any idea about what are we trying to achieve, our practice lacks direction. We don't know what to do and where to go and what should we be focusing on. Are we looking to gain pleasant experiences, or are we trying to turn away from experience? These are completely different things. So immediately when we start answering these type of questions, we are practicing yoga philosophy. So as a concrete takeaway from this lecture, I want to encourage everyone to study yoga philosophy and think deeply for yourselves what yoga means to me and you personally. Where are we going with it? What is the relationship between yoga and Bhoga for ourselves? Thank you. This, I hope, will give some basis for some questions.
Thank you, Matti. Thank you very much. Yeah, we can open up the discussion now. So do you want to stop the screen share, Matti?
Sure. Yeah.
And then we can, already we have Nora with her hand up. So Nora, please do go ahead. Open your mic and let us hear you.
Thank you so much, Matti, for this really inspiring and interesting and historically very looking back talk. So for me, it would be interesting in your perspective, would you say, so what we practice in our modern way of yoga, this is not yoga, but Bhoga? So I should go to a Bhoga class and not yoga class.
From this lecture, you certainly could make that like conclusion. And in many ways, yes. Of course, I don't go around saying people that you are actually not practicing yoga but Bhoga, because I rather frame it as this is like a new way of seeing this relationship between yoga and experience. But based on what was just said, I would say that this is sometimes or often even the case.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
This is actually a really good question. I would be really interested to hear that how does everyone here see this thing, like the relationship between yoga and Bhoga in the modern yoga scene.
I think it's a good point that you were making there again at the end of your talk about how people go along to yoga for the effects and quite specifically for the pleasant effects. So they don't go along to yoga for any unpleasant effects, do they? So which there potentially could be. I mean,
Yep.
there could be some effects from the practice which are maybe not so nice, but obviously the focus very much on the pleasant. And at the beginning of your talk, you were talking about pleasant and good as well, and the difference there. So there's a clearer focus, isn't there, on what people see as pleasant and effective and positive.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, definitely. And of course, that is natural for us human beings to seek out pleasant experiences. I think that's one of the prime motivators of our existence. Why we do anything we do. We want to avoid pain and gain pleasure. And that's why the Katha Upanishad is so powerful when it starts with, hey, people are seeking these pleasurable things, but this is not the goal. That's kind of a heavy statement right there, and also something to think about. But of course, what you also pointed out is that if we enter into the process of yoga as like a complete process of self-transformation, there will be pleasurable experiences, but there will also be difficult experiences. And we need to encounter things in ourselves and probably in the world that are not very pleasant. And this is something I think could be discussed more in the current yoga world as well. That also the difficult things may be part of the process.
I was also, oh, sorry, Nora, go ahead. You go ahead.
Just because I'm not too familiar with the definition of Bhoga. So is this only like pleasurable experiences, but are like not pleasurable experiences or negative or which feels not positive? Is this also Bhoga? If
Yeah,
it's a strong experience, so it's just the way you define experiences.
that's a very important point. Maybe I should have also emphasized it more. Bhoga is experience in general. It means any kind of experience. It means the way we are experiencing the existence through our senses and emotions and mind, whatever it may be like, pleasant or unpleasant. Of course, this is made more complicated because Bhoga is often translated as enjoyment. So immediately mind goes to pleasurable experiences. But the idea is that consciousness is enjoying existence, whether pleasant or unpleasant. So sort of consuming could be a better translation there. But yeah, it's both pleasant and unpleasant.
Thanks.
Yep.
But wouldn't that mean that yoga lost its transcendental aspect?
Through its history.
Yeah.
Well, in many ways, if we look at yoga only as a way of gaining experiences, pleasant or whatever, and also like a way of making ourselves better, for a way of self-development, then it begs the question: where is the transcendental aspect? What is beyond this? Like, again, I want to return to the Katha Upanishad, which I find really inspirational text, because it starts, or it takes place in the realm of death, beyond human life. And there, Nachiketas and Yama discuss what is beyond life. So this immediately leads us to the conclusion that these the earliest forms of yoga were ultimately about what is beyond this limited existence we call life. And if we only focus on this life, well, the question is left out, and the transcendental part is missing. So yeah.
Sometimes we do hear quite a lot of people kind of lamenting the modern evolution of yoga and the way it is taught these days. But from what I picked up from what you were saying, you were sounding a lot more serene, a lot more reassuring. It's kind of another evolution. That's just how it is. I mean, you're sort of quite you come to terms with that. That is just the way it has evolved, and it's not something that you kind of get bothered about or upset about. Or I mean, obviously you teach yoga philosophy and
Yeah.
to foreground that, but you were sounding quite sort of serene
Yeah.
about that.
Yeah, well, I mean, I wouldn't say yoga has evolved in the sense that it has like become better. I would say that it's just change, and change is inevitable. We cannot run away from change. And what I've learned from studying the history of yoga is that each form of yoga that we encounter, or that has ever existed, or that we see now, is a product of great historical, social, cultural, economic even forces. So yoga does not exist in a vacuum. It is always in relationship with what is surrounding it, with the wider world. So how yoga was in ancient India was just that. It was a product of ancient India. The way yoga changed through centuries was caused by historical events and cultural shifts. And now that what we are seeing now is how yoga looks in the modern times. And if we look at what yoga is like, we can learn a lot about our current state of the world, and social and economic and cultural systems, and also ourselves in that regard. But there is I don't think that there is this is somehow like a fatalistic, that okay, this is what it is now and there is no way out, there is no transcendental yoga anywhere. Quite the contrary. I think more than ever, more than at any other point in history, we have the possibility to look at yoga with this wide perspective and see that okay, there have been these different ideas about yoga, and there are all these philosophical ideas, and we can question yoga in a way that hasn't been possible before, and we can question ourselves as yoga practitioners. What are we actually doing? What are we trying to achieve? And we have this like huge pool of resources of yoga philosophy and techniques that we can study and practice. So I think that the situation is far from hopeless. And that's why I don't see that, okay, now everything is bad, because it's not. We can study these ancient texts and see yoga in different light as well.
Yeah, and maybe 1,000 years from now, then another group of yogis will be sitting around talking about how yoga has changed, and at that point in human history, maybe.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I don't think yoga is going anywhere.
Okay, good. Anybody else want to say something, or maybe ask a question for Matti now that we have him here, make the most of the opportunity? Aideen, you've got something.
Yeah, I don't have a question, but just to say, Matti, thank you. That was so interesting to link all those texts. I'm in third year of my course and I'm studying the texts, and we study them and we link them, but this was just such a good putting them all together. I feel like I've learned loads, and it's kind of really cemented what I have learned, but really just brought them all together and seeing it in that line in a lovely way. So thank you very much. I really enjoyed Zinal last year in your lecture, so it's great to see you on screen today. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I'm so happy to hear that. And I have to say that writing this lecture was also, I think I learned something too, because like this relationship between yoga and Bhoga somehow makes such a useful tool of understanding how things change. Thank you so much.
So some people reacting, telling us how much they enjoyed the lecture. Thank you. Okay, one final opportunity maybe to ask anything or say anything. If you still have a question that you're just thinking, maybe Maddie's got the answer to this, then please jump in. No. Okay, well, maybe we will stop there then, and just have a final roundup by reminding everybody that this has been recorded, so it will be going out to you perhaps next week sometime, so you'll be able to look at it again and again go through the detail of Matti's talk. If you feel there's anything you missed, it'll be on YouTube as well. So of course, all the people who signed up, but maybe are not here today, they'll be able to get it as well. There are further talks happening in March, April, May. We still have some talks ongoing. I think the next one in English is on the 6th of March. That is next week. And then there'll be others in other languages, I think several in French for anybody who is a French speaker. So look out for more talks as usual on the social media and on the website. Should you wish to make a donation to the European Union of Yoga, you can also do that via the website, but of course that's absolutely not necessary. All these talks are free, and we're very pleased to be able to make them accessible, make them available to everybody who wants to come along. So donation is up to you, but not in any way necessary. Just a reminder again about Zinal. So there's Zinal happening between the 17th and 21st of August in Switzerland, as usual. Emotions in yoga being the theme. And again, you can sign up for that via the EUI website. So I want to thank everybody for coming this morning, giving up some time on your Saturday morning to be with us. But especially thank you to Matti for putting together this lecture for us, as several people have said. Extremely interesting, extremely useful, and very, very nice to see those connections between different texts being made, because sometimes the texts are sort of studied in isolation. So kind of nice to see them being connected, I think. So thank you very much indeed for that. And we hope to maybe invite you back sometime for another talk, perhaps in next year's online program. We'll see if you have time. Thank you very much indeed, everybody. And enjoy your weekend, and we'll see you again, hopefully at some point. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Have a good time.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.